Daily Words of God. The work God does is not representative of the experience of his flesh. The work man does is representative of his experience. Everyone talks about their personal experience. God can express the truth directly, while man can only express the experience that corresponds to his having experienced the truth. God's work has no rules and is not subject to time or geographical constraints. He can express what he is at any time, anywhere. He works as he pleases. Man's work has conditions and context. Without them, he would be unable to work and unable to express his knowledge of God or his experience of the truth. To tell whether something is God's own work or man's work, you must simply compare the differences between the two. If there is no work done by God himself, and there is only the work of man, you will simply know that man's teachings are high, beyond the capacity of anyone else. Their tones of speaking, their principles in handling things, and their experienced and steady manner in working are beyond the reach of others. You all admire these people of good caliber and lofty knowledge, but you cannot see from God's work and words how high his humanity is. Instead, he is ordinary, and when working, he is normal and real, yet also immeasurable by mortals, which therefore makes people feel a kind of reverence for him. Perhaps a person's experience in his work is particularly advanced, or his imagination and reasoning are particularly advanced, and his humanity is particularly good. Such attributes can only gain people's admiration, but not arouse their awe and fear. People all admire those who can work well, who have particularly deep experience, and who can practice the truth. But such people can never elicit awe, only admiration and envy. But people who have experienced God's work do not admire God. Instead, they feel his work is beyond human reach and is unfathomable to man, that it is fresh and wonderful. When people experience God's work, their first knowledge of him is that he is unfathomable, wise, and wonderful, and they unconsciously revere him and feel the mystery of the work he does, which is beyond the ken of man's mind. People want only to be able to meet his requirements, to satisfy his desires. They do not wish to exceed him, because the work he does goes beyond man's thinking and imagination, and could not be done by man in his stead. Even man himself does not know his own inadequacies. Yet God has forged a new path and has come to bring man into a newer and more beautiful world. And so mankind has made new progress and has had a new start. What people feel for God is not admiration, or rather, is not only admiration. Their deepest experience is awe and love. Their feeling is that God is indeed wonderful. He does work that man is unable to do, and says things that man is unable to say. People who have experienced God's work always have an indescribable feeling. People of deep enough experience can understand the love of God. They can feel his loveliness, that his work is so wise, so wonderful, and thereby is infinite power generated among them. It is not fear or occasional love and respect, but a deep sense of God's compassion for man and tolerance of him. However, people who have experienced his chastisement and judgment sense his majesty and that he tolerates no offense. Even people who have experienced much of his work are unable to fathom him. All who truly revere him know that his work is not in line with people's notions, but always goes against their notions. He does not need people to admire him wholly or present the appearance of submission to him. Rather, they should achieve true reverence and true submission. In so much of his work, anyone with true experience feels reverence for him, which is higher than admiration. People have seen his disposition due to his work of chastisement and judgment, and they therefore revere him in their hearts. God is meant to be revered and obeyed, because his being and his disposition are not the same as those of a created being, and are above those of a created being. God is self-existent and everlasting. He is a non-created being, and only God is worthy of reverence and obedience. Man is not qualified for this. So all who have experienced his work and truly known him feel reverence toward him. However, those who do not let go of their notions about him, those who simply do not regard him as God, have no reverence toward him. And though they follow him, they are not conquered. They are disobedient people by nature. What he means to achieve by working thus is for all created beings to have hearts of reverence for the Creator, worship him, and submit to his dominion unconditionally. This is the final result that all his work is meant to achieve. If people who have experienced such work do not revere God, even slightly, and if their past disobedience does not change at all, then they are sure to be eliminated. If a person's attitude toward God is only to admire him or to show him respect from a distance, and not to love him in the slightest, then this is the result at which a person without a heart of love for God has arrived, and that person lacks the conditions to be perfected. If so much work is unable to obtain a person's true love, then that person has not gained God and does not genuinely pursue the truth. A person who does not love God does not love the truth, and thus cannot gain God, much less receive God's approval. Such people, however they experience the work of the Holy Spirit, and however they experience judgment, are unable to revere God. These are people whose nature is unchangeable and who have extremely wicked dispositions. All who do not revere God are to be eliminated, to be objects of punishment, and to be punished just like those who do evil, to suffer even more than those who have done unrighteous things.